I'm going to the options menu because the Pro Tools reference guide says generally you want to record with delay compensation enabled to maintain phase coherent time alignment between tracks with different DSP delays. Well, I think I like that, so I'm going to enable delay compensation with a little check over here. Now, as I record this, about 6 weeks after Pro Tools 11 was released, there's a debate on the blogs, a very active discussion about a bug in delay compensation. I expect that it's true, and I expect it to be fixed in one of those critical updates that we mentioned earlier, so we'll enable it for now. All right, our job is to accurately capture our performance. On some occasions, we can improve that performance. We always want the talent to feel comfortable and sound good, and if they don't think they sound good, you won't get the performance that you want to capture. So the cue, C-U-E, what the performer hears, is a big part of that. It's critically important in music, but it's also important in voiceovers and narration. Let's say that for this job, we're recording a poem by Poe, Once Upon a Midnight Dreary, While I Pondered, Weak and Weary, da-da-da-da. We might get a better performance from the voice person if we put the performer in a larger space. Not literally, but, through the magic of Pro Tools. So let's add a track. That's our mono audio track. And we'll call this Raven. And if I turn this on, you will hear me through Pro Tools and through the regular microphone. So let me turn this off so you just hear my regular voice. And let's add some reverb. We do that back in the mix window. So Command equals to the mix window, jump up here to the inserts, and add a reverb plugin. So plugin, reverb. We'll just do the deverb, and we can just do this in mono. Up pops the window with the settings in it. And I guess I have to have this on now for you to hear this. Ooh, yes, I'm in a larger space. Maybe I want to go to a church and bring down the length of this. And what's really critical here is the mix of drive, which is no reverb at all, and wet, which is complete reverb. And I need to find something in the middle that allows me to have the right setting. I'm going to go down to medium here and see if that's a little better. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary. And this is a little hard to set, this mix between the wet and the dry. There's a better way to do this, and let me show you that. So let me come back here, take this reverb off of here, and we will now create another track, Shift-Command-N. This time we want a stereo, because most reverbs are in stereo. And we want an aux input. Again, we're going to be in samples. And now we put the reverb on the aux. Let's do a multi-channel plugin, reverb, deverb. Same guy. This time it's in stereo. And we don't hear any sound yet. Well, that's because the voice is coming up on this channel and the reverb's over here, and they're not talking to one another yet. So let's have them talk to one another. Remember we talked about buses earlier, so we're going to send this to a bus. We're going to send some amount, so we'll just start sort of in the middle there. We're going to send that amount to this deverb. It hasn't received it yet because its input is no input, so we need to say bus, receive 1 and 2, and now we should get some reverb. Now we get more reverb, now we get no reverb. So this is the amount of send that allows you to get 100% of the reverb. I think I've convinced you, hope I've convinced you, that this send system using an aux track is much more efficient and rewarding than putting the plugin right on the track and determining the wet level by using the wet and dry. So this way, it's possible to leave this completely wet. It's really hard to listen to me with a lot of reverb probably. It's possible to leave this completely wet and just determine how much reverb you get by how much you actually send to the reverb. So let's try and find this church. Maybe it's a small church. And a long decay. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. The point here is we can definitely influence the performance by the kind of cue that we send to the performer, how they hear themselves. You're really going to find this to be an efficient system when you have a lot of tracks, not just this one announcer, but let's say you have drums, horns, guitars, basses, vocals, background vocals, a whole bunch of stuff in your session, and you want to change the reverb on the overall ambience of the performance. Let me move this out of the way. And instead of changing the reverb setting on this guy and this guy and this guy and all the different tracks in your session, you send them all, bus them all. I'll use that as a verb now. We bus them all to a reverb, and then we change it once, and it ripples throughout all the tracks in your session. That's a very handy way to use your plugins, use your reverbs and decays and delays especially. Those are the ones that really benefit from this aux and bus type system.